The wind of the Sahara never truly stops blowing. It is an ancient, restless force that carries the red dust of the desert across borders that exist only on maps, ignoring the lines drawn by colonial powers a century ago. It sweeps from the shattered ruins of Sirte in the north, across the vast, lawless expanses of Mali, and finally settles on the shoulders of a young captain in Ouagadougou. They say the desert does not lie, and more importantly, the desert does not forget. If you listen closely to the howling of that wind today, you can hear the echo of a warning that the world chose to ignore more than a decade ago. It is a ghostly frequency, a transmission from the past that is now shaping the future of an entire continent. It was 2011, a year that redefined the trajectory of Africa. In the capitals of the West, in Paris, in London, and in Washington, there was a mood of triumphant celebration. The headlines were bold and absolute, declaring the end of a tyrant. Muammar Gaddafi had fallen. The architects of that war raised their glasses, believing that by burying the man in the sand, they had also buried the dream of a sovereign, united Africa that could challenge the financial dominance of the dollar and the euro. They promised the world that Libya would become a beacon of democracy, that flowers of freedom would bloom from the craters left by NATO bombs. But they were wrong. It was a miscalculation of historic proportions, the kind of arrogance that topples empires. They failed to understand a fundamental truth of human history. You can kill a man, you can dismantle a government, and you can burn a flag, but you can never kill an idea. When Gaddafi fell, and his blood soaked into the soil of the Sahel, and from that blood, the seeds of resistance did not die. They merely went dormant. They waited in the darkness of the chaotic years that followed. They waited for the right season, the right moment, and the right vessel to return. 12 years later, the rain has finally come. But it did not fall on Tripoli. It fell on Burkina Faso. It did not take the form of a politician trained in the lecture halls of the Sorbonne. It took the form of a 34-year-old soldier with a red beret and eyes that have seen too much war. His name is Ibrahim Traoré, and he is the manifestation of the prophecy that the West feared most. To truly understand why this young captain strikes such fear into the hearts of established powers, we cannot simply look at the headlines of today, but we must look back at the wound that never healed. We must look at Libya. Before the intervention, Libya was the anchor of Africa. It was a nation where the wealth of the land was returned to the people, a place of free education and health care, a country that sat upon a throne of gold and oil. But Gaddafi committed the ultimate sin in the eyes of the old world order. He dared to dream of the gold dinar. He wanted a single African currency backed by gold, a system that would sever the chains of debt and financial dependence that bound the continent to Europe. For this ambition, he was removed. The intervention was sold to the public as a humanitarian necessity, but to the people of the Sahel, it is remembered as the Great Robbery. The gold vanished. The stability evaporated. In its place, a vacuum was created, a black hole of chaos that sucked in weapons, mercenaries, and extremism. The arsenals of Libya were looted, and those weapons flooded south, turning the Sahel into a burning frontier of terrorism and instability. This was the gift of the liberation. If you believe that history is often written by the victors, but the truth is kept by the survivors, take a moment to like this video. It helps us share this truth with a world that has forgotten. Ibrahim Traoré was just a young man when the bombs fell on Libya. He was not a policymaker. He was a witness. He watched as the promises of the West turned into the nightmares of his people. He saw the hypocrisy of foreign powers who claimed to fight terrorism, while their policies created the very conditions for terrorism to thrive. He saw his own country, Burkina Faso, ravaged by the violence that spilled over from the north. He saw his fellow soldiers die due to a lack of equipment, while foreign troops stationed on their soil seemed more interested in protecting mining interests than protecting civilians. In the forge of this chaos, a new philosophy was hammered into shape in Traoré's mind. He realized that the era of waiting for a savior from abroad was over. He understood that as long as African security was outsourced to Paris or Washington, African sovereignty would remain a myth. The collapse of Libya was not just a tragedy to him, it was a lesson. It taught him that a nation without its own teeth, without its own capacity to strike back, is just a victim in waiting. When Traoré rose to power in 2022, it was not a standard military coup. The world has seen hundreds of those. This was different. Well, this was a generational rupture. It was the sound of the children of the post-colonial era finally standing up and saying, "Enough." When he speaks, he does not use the diplomatic language of ambiguity. He speaks with the raw, unfiltered clarity of a soldier who has slept in the mud. He famously said, "A slave who does not rebel does not deserve pity." That sentence sent shockwaves through the continent, because it was not just a political statement. It was a spiritual invocation. It was the spirit of Thomas Sankara returning to the main stage, but this time, armored with the lessons of Gaddafi's fall. The West fears Traoré not because of his military arsenal, which is modest compared to NATO standards. They fear him because he possesses the one weapon they cannot counter with sanctions or airstrikes: legitimacy. But it is not the legitimacy they recognize. In the capitals of the West, legitimacy is a matter of paperwork, of processes, of boxes checked on a ballot. They have spent decades exporting this model to Africa, creating governments that look good on paper but fail to deliver the basic necessities of life. They created hollow states, fragile shells that collapse the moment they are tested. Traoré has flipped the script. He has redefined legitimacy for the modern era. To him and to the millions of young Africans watching him, legitimacy is not about how you got into the palace. It is about what you do once you are there. Legitimacy is protection. Legitimacy is feeding the hungry. Legitimacy is looking the imperial powers in the eye and refusing to blink. When terrorists threaten a village, a ballot box cannot save the people, and only a disciplined, motivated, and sovereign army can. By living with his troops, by eating what they eat, by refusing the trappings of luxury, Traoré has built a connection with his people that no foreign-backed leader can dream of. This deep connection is why the recent events in Libya, the rumors, the memories, the symbolic gatherings for the Gaddafi legacy, resonate so powerfully with the rise of Traoré. The people are connecting the dots. They see that the man in the red beret is picking up the unfinished work of the past. Gaddafi wanted to expel foreign military bases. Traoré did it. In a move that stunned diplomatic circles, he ordered the French military to leave Burkina Faso. He did not ask. He commanded. He tore up the defense accords that had bound his country for 60 years. He sent the ambassador packing. Well, this was the first step in the prophecy, the reclamation of the land. Gaddafi wanted to nationalize resources for the benefit of the African people. Traoré is doing it. He is reviewing mining codes, demanding that the gold and uranium of Burkina Faso benefit the Burkinabe people first. He has challenged the dominance of foreign corporations that have grown fat on the wealth of the Sahel while the locals starve. He is effectively saying that the era of the free lunch for the West is over. If you want our resources, you will treat us as partners, not subjects. Gaddafi dreamed of a United States of Africa, a single powerful bloc that could stand toe-to-toe with the superpowers. Traoré is building it, brick by brick. The Alliance of Sahel States, AES, comprising Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, is the realization of that dream. But it is a fortress built on mutual defense. An attack on one is an attack on all. This is not just a treaty. It is a brotherhood forged in the fire of shared struggle. These three nations have turned their backs on the regional bodies that they view as puppets of the West and have decided to write their own destiny. If you are watching this and feeling the shift in history, if you want to be part of this community that uncovers the truth, make sure you are subscribed to the Red Beret. Turn on notifications, because the mainstream media will not tell you this story. The parallels are haunting. Gaddafi warned that if he fell, the floodgates would open and Europe would face a crisis of migration and terrorism. He was right, but he also predicted that eventually the millions would wake up. When he predicted that a new generation would rise from the ashes of humiliation to reclaim their dignity. Ibrahim Traoré is the avatar of that generation. But Traoré is not just repeating the past, he is evolving it. He knows that Gaddafi's fatal flaw was trusting that the West would respect his sovereignty if he made concessions. Traoré knows better. He knows that in the brutal game of geopolitics, you are either at the table or you are on the menu. That is why he has pivoted east. He has forged strategic partnerships with Russia, Turkey, and Iran. This is not about trading one master for another, as his critics claim. It is about diversification. It is about having options. It is about obtaining the hardware, the drones, the artillery, the intelligence, necessary to win a war, without the political strings attached by Western capitals. At the sight of Russian flags waving in the streets of Ouagadougou, alongside the flag of Burkina Faso, is not a sign of submission. It is a sign of defiance against the old monopoly. It is a visual declaration that the West no longer owns the monopoly on friendship in Africa. This shift has terrified the old colonial powers. They are scrambling to understand how they lost influence so quickly. They are blaming disinformation. They are blaming mercenaries. They are blaming social media. But they are missing the point. They lost influence because they stopped offering value. They offered lectures on human rights while buying uranium at rock-bottom prices. Traoré offers dignity. He offers a vision of the future where an African child can look in the mirror and see a conqueror, not a victim. The youth of Africa, at the Gen Z population that is now the largest demographic on the continent, are not looking at CNN or the BBC for their news. They are looking at TikTok, at Telegram, at YouTube, and what they see is Ibrahim Traoré. They see a reflection of their own anger, their own hope, and their own potential. They see a leader who does not apologize for being African. This is the spiritual dimension of the conflict. It is a battle for the soul of the continent. The ghost of Libya is no longer a specter haunting the ruins. It has found a new body. The ideas that Gaddafi spoke of, economic independence, military strength, cultural pride, are no longer theories. They are being implemented in real time in the Sahel. The Alliance of Sahel States is testing the very foundations of the global financial system. There is talk of a new currency, and a move away from the CFA franc, the colonial currency that critics argue has held West Africa back for decades. If the AES succeeds in launching a sovereign currency backed by their immense natural resources, it would be the final fulfillment of the gold Dinar dream. It would act as an economic earthquake that would vibrate through the stock markets of Europe. The risks are immense. Traoré knows this. He lives with a target on his back every single day. The forces of the status quo do not give up power easily. There will be attempts to destabilize his government, to sow discord within the alliance, to assassinate his character and perhaps his person. But he walks with the calm assurance of a man who has already accepted his fate. He often quotes Sankara, "Kill Sankara, and thousands of Sankaras will be born." He knows that he has already lit a fire that cannot be extinguished. Even if he were to fall tomorrow, the idea has taken root. The youth have tasted sovereignty, and they will not go back to the diet of subservience. We are witnessing a historical pivot point. The axis of the world is tilting. For centuries, the flow of power went from north to south. Now the south is rising. The Sahel is no longer the edge of the world. It is the center of a new resistance. Gaddafi's warning was ignored, and the world paid the price. Traoré's actions cannot be ignored. He is forcing the world to listen. He is demanding a seat at the table, not as a guest, but as an equal. The West must now decide. Will they continue to fight the ghosts of the past? Or will they accept the reality of the present? What will they continue to treat Africa as a problem to be managed? Or will they respect it as a power to be reckoned with? As the sun sets over the savannah, painting the sky in hues of violent orange and deep purple, the red beret soldiers stand watch. They are not guarding a line in the sand. They are guarding a dream. The prophecy has been fulfilled. The heir has arrived, and the wind that blows from Libya is no longer a wind of mourning. It is a wind of change. What do you think? Is Ibrahim Traoré the leader Africa has been waiting for, or is he walking a dangerous path? The conversation about Africa's future happens right here, in the comments section. Leave your thoughts below. Let's debate. Let's discuss. The story of the Sahel is the story of our time. It is a story of betrayal, of resilience, and ultimately, of resurrection. But we will continue to document this journey, to peel back the layers of propaganda, and to show you the raw reality of the fight for sovereignty. Thank you for watching The Red Beret. History is being written now. Don't just watch it, understand it. Share this video with someone who needs to wake up. Dismissed.